At the war's end, Marxist theorists had to confront the question, what had gone wrong? Antonio Gramsci in Italy and Georg Lukács in Hungary believed they had the answer.
Gramsci and Lukács argued that Western culture had blinded the working class to its true Marxist class interests. Before a Marxist revolution could take place, Western culture had to be destroyed. In 1919, Lukács, who was considered the most brilliant Marxist theorist since Marx himself, asked, "Who will save us from Western civilization?" That same year, 1919, Lukács became Deputy Commissar for Culture in the Bolshevik Bela Kun government in Hungary, where he launched a program of cultural terrorism. As part of that program, Lukács introduced a radical sex education program into the Hungarian schools. Political correctness, as we know it, was already beginning to take form.
He tried to actually undermine the unity of the family, and that was one of the reasons that he tried to introduce sex education.
Laszlo Pastor, a leader in the Hungarian resistance against the communist takeover of Hungary after World War II, explains why children were targeted.
It's always much tougher to convert an adult, to do something what he was taught not to do.
The program left great residual effects on Hungary.
The only thing what we were permitted to accept as far as culture is concerned, what they were teaching, that was it. Free thinking was a very big sin.
Following Lukács's lead, the Frankfurt School would be the vehicle that translated Marxism from economic into cultural terms, giving us what we now know as political correctness.
Another new member was Erich Fromm. Fromm, a practicing psychoanalyst, was noted for his radical Marxist social psychology. He pioneered the concept of sexual liberation and gender politics. According to Martin Jay, in Fromm's view, masculinity and femininity were not reflections of essential sexual differences. They were derived instead from differences in life functions, which were in part socially determined.
Another piece of political correctness was falling into place.
In 1932, Herbert Marcuse became a member of the Institute for Social Research. Marcuse would ultimately become the most important member of the Frankfurt School for the development of political correctness. In the 1950s and 60s, Marcuse would complete the translation of Marxism into cultural terms and inject it into the New Left. It was Marcuse who finally answered the question posed by Horkheimer in the early 30s. Who could substitute for the working class as an agent of revolution?
So you had to find some new constituency, whether it was students or blacks or women or gays or whatever it was. And Marcuse had a fluid Marxism that fit into this.
Martin Jay confirms the role of the Frankfurt School in creating the victim groups that constitute the politically correct coalition. Of critical importance for the injection of the Frankfurt School's work into the student rebellion of the 1960s was Marcuse's revival of Fromm's notion of sexual liberation.
Marcuse, however, was the main conduit of ideas. But Marcuse had written one important work in the 1950s called Eros and Civilization.
Marcuse's Eros and Civilization condemned all restrictions on sexual behavior, calling instead for polymorphous perversity. Polymorphous perversity helped open the door to aspects of political correctness, such as gay liberation.
This was his idea of what human society, a good human society, should be based on, was a certain kind of polymorphous perversity and narcissism, which by liberating non-procreative eros, was his term, we would find great enlightenment and great happiness. This was supposed to be the key to utopia.